Hello, and welcome to the Technology Deep Dive for the Systems Integration part of the Connected Service Integration Catalyst. My name is Iiro Lempinen, and I work as the Head of Expert Services here at ONEiO. We're very excited to be part of the TMF Connected Service Integration Catalyst project, along with the other partners that you can see on the screen right now. And we're happy to showcase the technical aspects of the ONEiO platform in connection to how we are now enabling large enterprises and communication service providers to collaborate in a seamless way through a shared architecture. As we all know, ITSM integrations have been a hot topic for quite some time, and these type of integrations are often seen as being difficult to implement and maintain. Often, enterprises and service providers are still opting to continue swivel chairing or double keying, since a fully fledged enterprise grade integration to handle ITSM processes has just been either too cumbersome, time consuming, or expensive to create. For service providers, onboarding a new customer and automating the most crucial service processes should not be a project that takes many months and drives both parties probably insane. This is exactly the challenge that OneIO has been solving pretty successfully now for over 10 years. We believe that organizations should be free to use the tools that they are accustomed to and to work with the processes that they have, instead of changing their way of working to suit the integration methods. Therefore, the key component of OneIO integrations is adaptability, and that's something we do very well. OneIO has an out-of-the-box ability to communicate with most ITSM tools, and we've built the platform to understand the various processes and mechanisms that are intrinsic to those individual tools, whether it's ServiceNow, Jira, or BMC Remedy, or any other tool. This means that much of the work that goes into a traditional ITSM integration has already been pre-built inside of OneIO. The difference between OneIO and many other traditional integration platforms is that with OneIO, you're actually connecting your systems to the central OneIO hub. This means that there are no point-to-point integrations, but instead OneIO acts as a smart integration broker in between the different systems. Here we are in the OneIO user interface, which works in any modern browser. The basic integration configuration in OneIO consists of endpoint types and routing rules. Endpoint types are connectors that are either built to match the needs of a specific tool, or in the case of service providers, the whole set of exposed services that the service provider wants to offer to their end customers. Endpoint types are also where different authentication methods to specific tools and APIs are managed. Routing rules, then, on the other hand, are a representation of the actual use case and logic that determines the rules of an integration. Routing rules are also the place where value transformations and mappings is done. This is the layer that anyone using our solutions will be able to access and easily modify and develop the integration rules and mappings further. For this Catalyst project, we worked on creating specialized endpoint types that meet the TMF 621 and TMF 622 API specifications and standards. This means that if you as a service provider have built your APIs according to these TMF specifications, we already have the built-in capability to consume those APIs within minutes. If, on the other hand, you don't have APIs based on the TMF specs, we can simply connect directly to your ITSM tool and make use of the same capabilities without any hassle. All right, let's have a look at the endpoint type configurations. For the Catalyst project, we have three different endpoint types in use that you can see on the screen now. One endpoint type that represents the large enterprise customer, in this case, who are using ServiceNow. This endpoint type is used to transfer the orders and trouble tickets that the customer would be sending over to the CSP. The authentication and entity types are then configured in the main endpoint view in OneIO, which you can see here. So we have the URL to the ServiceNow instance that we're using for the customer, and we have the authentication, so user name and password, so on. We also have the entity types that we've configured for this endpoint type. So we have change requests, CSM orders, CSM order lines, incidents, problems, and service requests. These are all very simple configurations where we basically tell OneIO what type of fields they should expect for each of these entity types. All right. And then if we go back into the endpoints view, we can see that we have a second endpoint type that represents the CSP service desk. And it is this one here. This is used to handle the trouble tickets sent from the customer, but it can also handle proactive tickets from the CSP and relay those to the customer's ITSM tool. So basically, if the CSP recognizes that there's a service outage, for example, they can create an incident and push it over to the customer for the customer to kind of react and mitigate the issue if that is what they want to do. And for this one, it's the same thing. We have the URL to this CSP ServiceNow instance and also the authentication and user credentials here. For the entity types, they're a little different since for the CSP, the entities we're working with are case, change request, incident, problem, and service request. If we then go back to endpoints again, we see that lastly, we have the CSP order endpoint type, which is used to route the customer device orders to the order handling system developed by Ericsson in this case. And again, similar configuration, a little bit of a different view since we have different authentication method in use, but we have the URL, we have the OAuth credentials here, and we have the entity types, which in this case is only order since we're only dealing with orders towards Ericsson. I mentioned adaptability earlier, and there lies the power of ONEiO. Our platform converts any payloads that we receive into a generic ONEiO data model, which means that we don't care in what format your tool speaks in, be JSON, XML, or CSV. This also means that no data model transformations need to be configured, and the actual integration rules can be easily reused since they're not tied to a specific data format. Conversion of the data into the outgoing payload is then similarly as easy. And you can probably understand how much of the traditional configuration work is taken away by this way of handling data. All right, let's now go into the messages view in the ONEiO UI. If we scroll down a bit, we notice that, all right, here we have a new order from the customer side. So basically, we get an inbound message from customer service now, and OneIO recognizes that we're talking about a new device order that the customer has issued. We then automatically parse the incoming field values, and basically after that, they're readily available as generic input values for OneIO to use and map forward. We then create the correct outgoing data payload that corresponds to the TMF622 standard and pushes it forward to the TMF622 API that Ericsson has set up for their order management system. So basically on the left, you can see the incoming data payload, and on the right, we see the outgoing data payload. And if we look at the details, we can see that this is the actual JSON payload that we're sending over to Ericsson, and it matches with the TMF622 standard and specification. If we then look at the actual mapping behind this rule, we can see that it's very straightforward from one field to the other, and this is all it needs. It's very simple. If we then go back to the message view again, we can also see that here we have an actual incident from a customer. And again, the same thing. We have the incoming payload on the left and the outgoing payload on the right. This is now using the TMF621 API specification, so it looks a little bit different, but the same principles apply here as well. If we go and see the rule behind this create action, and we go to the mappings, we can see that it's still fairly straightforward, but there's a couple of nice things here for you to see. For example, we have state versus status on the outgoing side, and we can do kind of conditional mappings. So if a state from the customer side is, for example, 2, then it corresponds to a status in progress on the CSP side. And same thing can be done with severity, impact, priority, whatever you want. There's one feature in OneIO which is very cool, and that is conversations. If we go through the message view again, as we were here previously, and we go to a conversation, we can see that, all right, ONEiO keeps a track of all the messages that are linked to a single conversation. This is especially necessary when we're having case exchanges between two different systems where we need to maintain the context of a case exchange. So we know that this ticket or this incident on one side corresponds to this exact ticket or incident on the other side. And this is done within ONEiO. It's a built-in feature. So basically conversations are kept in place and we track the conversations. So we basically never do any updates on the wrong entities on either side, since we have a kind of through and through end-to-end logging for individual conversations. All right, there you have it. This was a quick rundown of the basic principles that ONEiO operates with. As you hopefully saw, ONEiO can be seen as a made-to-purpose tool for seamless communication and collaboration between customers and communication service providers. I hope you got an idea of our technology, and if you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to contact ONEiO, contact me directly, or come and meet us in September at the Digital Transformation World event in Copenhagen. Thanks. Bye-bye.